Good evening and welcome to another podcast with myself, Jenifer Taylor, and Tina. It's the second time I've had Tina come on. And as you all know, with my journey, it's all about debunking the new age. But what I found is like really the old ways and the old wisdom is really where I feel very comfortable. So one of the things that keep coming up in my search for the truth is the runes. And I thought, I need to speak to Tina. I need to speak to you because you create them, you understand them, and you can shed some more light on them. But first of all, Tina, if I can hand it over to you and just could you introduce yourself and who you are and why I feel this connection with you?
Well, I'm Tina, and I am basically just a housewife. I never have had I haven't written any books, although I do plan on it on a certain time. I have a Substack on which I write a lot about esotericism. And I have a history of deep and sincere interest in occultism and esotericism. And runes were something that, oddly enough, I felt no connection to, or very fleetingly at least. And I just kind of put them away. And part of that had to do also with that I couldn't find any literature on them that interested me. It all sounded very fluffy and very uh, too positive. While I got the impression that when I held these things in my hand, that is not really true always. It can be, but it's not like this, oh my gosh, it's all unicorns and rainbows, and isn't it all great and lovely? And I thought, like, people that lived back then can never have thought that way because life was brutal and harsh, especially considering the climate where these people lived. That cannot be it. So I kind of just put them away for a long time, even until I was in my 20s. Because when I first got to know them, I was in my early teens, and I must have been around 13 or 14 years old. And then they went away for at least 10 years. And then I found them again by accident almost. And I started to experiment with them. And all of a sudden, I had these insights when working with them. And I didn't use them for divination. I was just holding them and looking at them. And sometimes I would just stare at one for a very long time and read about what the pictographical meaning of them was, and then try to see it in that rune. And all of a sudden I had these amazing daydreams, visions almost, about what it must have meant for people back then, and I found it very fascinating. And for a very, very long time, I still had much difficulty finding good information about them. And it's almost a shame to say that the best information I found came from sources that were and still are considered controversial. But the information was rather good and it was useful. And finally, I felt like, yeah, okay, if I try to ignore where it comes from, the information seems to resonate with me. Like it, and it feels true what they're saying. All other ideologies linked to that aside for a moment, I'm just talking about the runes and the esoteric aspect of it. And I felt suddenly a connection with something way deeper than just a symbol on a piece of wood. All of a sudden, I felt like I'm connected to a whole lineage of people all throughout the ages who used these things, who wrote with these things. And it made me feel very grounded. And ever since, I felt very comfortable with them. And it's just my preferred method of doing magic and also divination.
One thing that popped into my ears, you said like where you found the information to some people it was controversial. What does that mean?
Well, I don't want to use the word because you might get demonetized, but it
Okay.
was certain European ideologies that later became very demonized, maybe rightfully so. Um, well, the one with the red flag with the symbol in the white circle in the 30s. The mustache man.
Oh, yes, gotcha. Yep. With you, Tina. Yep.
So that's why, I mean, yes, of course, and they did a lot of research in occultism. And not to say that I identify with any of those movements, but I read into the occultism a lot. I read lots of books about it and how they searched for occult objects and meanings everywhere. And that is how gradually I became to learn more and more. So yeah, it is a controversial entry point for sure. But nevertheless, I mean, if it wasn't valuable, then these people would not have been so relentless in their pursuit of that knowledge.
Yeah. Gosh, yeah. When I listen back on my videos, I'm like, try not to go like repeat everything I say. Oh gosh, menopause brain. It's something came into my mind and then it just suddenly went again. Back in those days, there was a lot of research, wasn't there? There was a lot of understanding about, and that hasn't really changed in like, because one of the things I was going to ask you about, and I always divert, is when I'm doing these researching and I'm like listening to people talk, there's so much diversity there is. And a lot of things keep going back to the Bible and what the Bible said. And then I thought, well, surely the Bible wasn't always around, but yeah, back to the runes. So you were quite young when you came across them, and it sang to you. Well, not sang to you, that sounds very new agey, but something inside you connected to them that you wanted to know more. So how did you learn how to read them? Was it like you said, you just connected to each of them?
I actually kept a diary about them
Right.
when I started again. I started to experiment in the sense, like, indeed, when I was daydreaming or I was looking at them and it's just holding them sometimes, like, what thoughts are going through my mind when I'm holding this specific symbol, this specific rune in my hand. And I wrote that down. And then also I started to experiment with dreams by keeping a dream journal, like, what would my dreams be, or how does it affect my dreams if I put the whole bag of runes under my pillow, or if I put certain combinations under my pillow. And I gradually also, while reading back in that journal, noticed certain things, like, yeah, it seems to affect my dreams somehow. I can't explain how, but it did. When I had remarkably positive runes under my pillow, I had remarkably positive dreams as well, sometimes very inspirational dreams. And when I had the more harsh runes under my pillow, I did not have nightmares, but I had very intense dreams that I woke up with a feeling of urgency, almost like I need to remember what this dream was about. And then later, once you read back, it all sort of fell into place almost. And then later in my life, I came to know other people who, well, notably, by the way, Freya Aswin, who wrote books about runes, who I met fairly recent, by the way, and we had her on our podcast as well, who said things about runes that I remember doing before I had even heard of this woman. I didn't know her back then. I'd never heard of her back then when I was keeping that journal. And all of a sudden, I was like, wow, it's not just me. I am not imagining this. There are other people having these exact same experiences with them. And I found that so mind blowing. And it all confirmed it for me, like, yeah, I'm not making this up. This is not just in my head. This is something magical that I'm holding.
So with the runes, am I correct in thinking that Odin brought them or discovered them? Is that correct?
So the story goes, yeah, he
What's your understanding?
well, Odin is, first and for all, went through a sort of transformation of his own. Before, he was a god of magic, because he is a god of magic. Um, he was more the god of frenzy, and he still is in his later stages. but the frenzy is a sort of a shamanic frenzy. Like you have to imagine, like when people were dancing around a campfire and they got into these trance-like states, that is the sort of frenzy that he is the god of. Now, from that trance, people could then, you know, become the Ulfetnar or the berserker, where they draw the animal spirit in them and they take the attributes on them. That's where that all comes from. And perhaps, most likely, even there were drugs or substances involved with that. And he went through that transformation in the sense that he sort of became more, how do you say, refined through the time that he was actively worshipped on a larger scale. He became more, refined is the word, really, because from that, he also became more of a god of magic, of poetry, of word song, of word magic. These are all things that have somewhat to do with the frenzy aspect, but more refined. I keep coming back to that word because that is the only word that I can really think of in that sense. Because before Odin was the Allfather of the Aesir, the sky gods, there was another god that was the Allfather. It was Tyr, and Tyr was the god of justice, but of divine justice, of kingly justice. Also a god of war. So is Odin, by the way. But he is not a god of magic. He's more strict in his approach to justice. While Odin is a bit more of a, I don't want to say a trickster, but more of somebody that knows when to bend the rules a little bit. Instead of being, to use a gamer term, a lawful person. But I think the reason is that Odin eventually supplanted Tyr as the Allfather god is because we found out as humans that we cannot live by law alone, and that we need something more in our lives than just that. Otherwise, it becomes too strict, too stringent, very much like how life is now, I find. We adhere way too much to reason and logic as if it's the end all be all of human existence. And I see this craving in people for something more than that. Because so many people ask themselves that, is this it? Is this it? And no, it's not it.
Thank you, Tina, because like a lot of things, like me included, were searching for the old ways and the old wisdom, and it's kind of like, is this it? Like, you know, like when we look at the world around us, like the last, I don't know, like I'm 50, I don't know how old I am, 55, something like 56. And I think, and from the feedback I get from my videos is like people are saying everyone's searching for some more oomph in their life, some more magic, for a better word. So that's, I am correct in saying that, aren't I? We all not searching. I mean, when I talk to Bjorn, he says like it's not searching for the old ways, it's searching for the meaning of life. No, not the meaning of life, the science of life, how we live in tune with things. And I think one of the things like I heard with the runes is like if we carry them around us, they give us a form of protection. And it all sounds very not powerful as in I need to be powerful, but and magical in like Harry Potter style. But what I guess I'm saying is like, and that's why I turn to you, because you're very grounded and down to earth. It's like there's more layers to this reality, isn't there? There's and we're all, not all, but some of us are really wanting to reconnect to those layers of this reality. Does that all make sense, Tina? I'm not waffling, am I?
But definitely, I mean, runes in themselves, and not many people are going to want to hear this, or is going to be some people that are not going to want to hear this, but runes can never be seen apart from the gods, the Norse or Germanic gods, because, well, first, without the Norse Germanic gods, we wouldn't have had them in the first place. And secondly, that whole culture on a spiritual level were animists. The Norse, perhaps a bit less, especially in their later stages, but the Germanics definitely were for a longer time animists. So there is more than just the magic of the runes. Runes are just a means in which we get into contact with all these other layers. They help us in that sense, because all these other layers are still part of this world that we are living in.
Yeah.
There are all sorts of spirits out there, and gods are just another form of those. It's a different kind of spirit or entity, let's call it altogether. But there are spirits of the land. There are spirits of the light, of the darkness, in a literal sense. By the way, I don't mean that in a religious or
No.
sense. There are forces of chaos that are agents of unbridled chaos, and it is all part of that world, and it's all connected, because even the gods cannot withstand that unbridled chaos. At the end of the mythology, well, it's not the end of the mythology, but at a certain point the gods are defeated by these forces, because that is just how nature goes. We can create order, but only for a while. Sooner or later, nature in its raw power will always get the upper hand. It always does.
Yeah, because if you look like in England, well, I guess all over the world, but like we can build these walls and we can build these pathways, but there's like nooks and crannies where nature takes back what is rightly hers. Oh gosh, I was writing things down and then I just go on a tangent. So can we just go back to connecting to the spirit of the land and animism and Germanic?
Yeah.
So can we just dive a little bit? You speak so fluently, and I'm listening to you, and then I'm like, yeah, I get this, and then I'm like, oh, I need to ask another question. But our ancestors knew the land, and like you said, we're not looking back on our ancestors like all fluffy and unicorns. It was hard and brutal and harsh. But jumping back into like our present day, and all this has been hidden from us, hasn't it? I feel like when I listen to you and Fiona and Thomas, you'll get it, you'll understand it, you'll breathe it, you live it, and it's your way of life. And me, kind of like finding my way, it is trying to comprehend it all. But we have been put under a spell. I mean, it's been turned against us, hasn't it? The reality of this world we live in.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at ourselves as just because especially in modern times, and that started with Christianity in Europe, that rather than being a part of nature, that we are above nature or its masters. Well, that is simply not true. So, and that is a reality that will become extremely obvious if you go out in the woods alone, without clothes, without any means of comfort, without any means of modern communication. Go out there for a night or two with as little as you can, and find out how fast Mother Nature is trying to kill you. So, yeah, nature is not a nurturing mother. She can be, but there are comes with a lot of caveats. For instance, you are not at the top of the food chain. And that's something that you will find out if you go out in the forest, not maybe not the UK or the Italian forests, but if you go in the deep forest alone and you face off with a predator that is as big as you or bigger, it's not going to end well for you.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And the same thing is so for the spirit world, really. We feel as if we are alone on this world and maybe even in space. And that is constantly also told us in a bit of a nasty way, even like, if there are aliens, how come we can't find them? Oh, maybe Earth is an insane asylum and they just don't want anything to do with us. So always the isolation is kind of pushed on us. It's like, and it's, I think that is to make us feel helpless and demoralized and unmotivated. Because if you see yourself as just a part of the whole, and it doesn't have, and it starts right here where you are, it can start in your own home. You can attract a good spirit in your house. And many cultures have done this in the form of ancestor worship. So you have a little altar in your house where you call upon your ancestors, your good ancestors, that you wanted their wisdom, you wanted their love, and you wanted their care, really, their blessing. That is a spirit. And that is a really good entry point. That is also a very safe way to start with these things. And I've noticed that once you start with small things like that, you will start to notice their presence. It will make itself known to you. And but how it does that is very personal, because what is very personal for you is not the same thing as what is personal for me. It's in the very small things. Let's say I had a very I have a very emotional reaction to a red balloon, let's say. Then all of a sudden I'm going to have these little red balloon signs seeing everywhere. And that's going to be the sign from my ancestors saying, like, I'm with you. You can call on us when you need us. We are just there for you. Maybe you have an extremely deep emotional connections to the scissors here. And all of a sudden you're going to see these scissors. But of course, these are very different things. So they can never be quantified in such a way that it's the same for everybody else. They are very personal. But as if we are open to that, we allow that in. It's a bit like a muscle almost. We need to train it a little bit because we're taught not to pay attention to these things, like, don't be stupid. That is just a coincidence. That is pareidolia of whatever, where you see faces in things. But that is how you train yourself. You look at the clouds, for instance, and you see, I don't know, a face. How is that face looking? Is that face looking angry? Is that face looking happy? And maybe that doesn't mean anything on the large scale, but for you personally, it can have deep meaning. Are you feeling bad right now? Is that why you're seeing a face in the sky that is growling at you? Maybe there is something that you need to work on then in order to help yourself get over that. Because who wants to live always angry or always sad? Not many people. But we have that power to help ourselves. We don't need to rely on pharmaceuticals or endless amount of therapy or psychiatrics. I often think that is just to get more money out of you. A psychiatrist or a therapist is never going to tell you that you're sane because they want you to keep coming back.
Yes, that's very, very true. So yeah, when I see a heron, it's not a heron, red kite in England. It's usually confirmation of what I'm thinking of. So back to the runes. One of the things, like, there's I'll draw the symbol because this is one of the things I'm like. So this symbol is for protection, isn't it, Tina?
Yeah.
But in the New Age movement, you draw a circle around it and you turn it upside down, and it's all to do with peace, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, the creator of the peace sign said that he inspired it on a painting of Goya. I don't remember the name of the painting, but it's a guy standing like this in front of a cannon or something. And he imagined that guy laying down because to him, that was a sign of peace. But if that guy is laying down like that, splayed out, well, then he's dead, isn't he? Then he's been shot by the cannon. Of course, there's peace because there's no longer any opposition. It's kind of the same as what, and I hate to say this again because I don't want to demonetize you. It's what the religion of peace calls. It's why the religion of peace is called the religion of peace. It's a sort of peace that comes when all opposition is either converted or dead.
Oh,
So yeah, it's a perversion, because what does this stand for? It is a weapon, first and for all, a defensive weapon of an animal that only uses it when it is threatened.
oh yeah, like a bull deer
Yeah.
atlas.
And when the horns are down, well, then he's disarmed, isn't he? Because he's dead.
Yeah.
And the stag is that animal that protects the females in his flock, and by extent also the children. So it's a very masculine symbol in that sense, but yeah, it is defensive. It is protective in that sense, like basically the essence of a pacifist. I won't go out looking for trouble, but if trouble finds me, I will be ready for it, and I won't hold back. You have the right to self-defense, and that is basically what it stands for. And the peace symbol of that is basically a perversion also of the meaning of pacifism. It's like, oh no, I'm just going to surrender. It's like, hell no, I'm not going to surrender. And that is in Europe also something that I think we've been taught. And that peace symbol is a piece of black magic in that sense. Like, no, we never need to fight back. If we want peace, we must just let things happen. Has that ever worked?
No.
Especially in the last years, has it worked, or has it just gotten worse and escalated more? And
Yeah. So yeah, black magic as I mean, magic is the voice of this reality, isn't it? This do you see this place that we live on, a realm or planet, or how do you describe it?
well, on a physical level, I think of it as a planet, a round planet, not a flat Earth. But on a spiritual level, I see it as part of a multiverse. Um, yeah, I think that's a good way, because also in the Norse Germanic mythology, there are 9 worlds, or at least, yeah, 9 distinct worlds.
Yes.
And 3 of them are accessible by humans without any, without too much issue. 2 of them for sure. This one and the underworld,
Oh yeah.
the realm of the dead. Some will go to the realm of the gods, or part of them will go there. But there is a way for us to connect with that world right here. And we don't need a middleman for that. We don't need a church. That is something that every one of us needs to do for themselves. And that is possible. And that is also why we've been a bit castrated in that sense with the Christian church, because it was heavily discouraged that you, the peasant that cannot even read or write, have a personal connection with the divine. No, 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 no. That can't be. You need us, and you need to pay us for it.
Yes.
Quite literally.
Yes. And you need to live by our rules and our standards and our ways, and just live a very dull, lonely life, isn't it? You mentioned the divine in the paganism. Oh, I don't like that word either. Our ancestors, how did they define the divine?
That's a really good question. You know, in almost every culture, a people are the respective children of their gods. So I would perhaps think of it as that as well, that we are their children, and that every people, every culture even, have their own gods, because they are those gods' children. Now, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's pointless. It's a bit of a pointless endeavor, I find, because there's no right answer. They're both correct, depending on your preference, really.
Yeah, thank you. So So going back to the runes, when you do it, I think the runes, like for me, it's always been the oracle cards and the tarot. But I never knew about the runes from an early age, but the runes are so ancient. But they called you and you connected with them and you wanted to learn about them. But it seems like you were born with the runes within you. That's what I hear and feel. It's like a part of Tina. I see Tina and I see runes. It's just one things, one thing. And the runes can give insight. They never predict the future, do they? They just give insight. Is that correct?
I don't think it is runes that predict the future. I also don't think that it is the reader that predicts the future. Now, the reader can have certain psychic ability for sure, and that certainly helps. But what I think predicts the future, and strange as that is going to sound, is the gods. Yeah, I have done so many rune readings where I feel that it's not actually me doing it. I don't. I also don't think that I'm connecting to a random spirit.
No.
I feel that some god, uh, Odin, to be precise, doesn't take over. It doesn't take me over. It's not a possession, but I'm sitting there at my laptop and all of a sudden I'm typing and I'm typing and I'm typing and it comes flowing out. And all of a sudden I'm just done with it. And I'm sitting there like, well, I don't know where that came from. But I could stop it at any time. But at the time you're doing it, it's just, it goes so fluently, you just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think is happening. Now, when a psychic, let's say a psychic uses runes in order to make a prediction for the future, well, a psychic is not cannot see everything. So there are potentials that a psychic can see. Now, which one of these potentials is going to become reality is dependent on a lot of factors. And those factors are almost impossible to predict because people, we have free will. We do whatever the hell we want. Who knows, really?
Yeah. Yeah, because whenever I've done card readings, you can see a certain outcome, but it all depends on like how the person is feeling, what they choose. Like I say, it's all about free will, isn't it? One of the things I did do with the with the one I showed you is like somebody stood right behind me in the supermarket. They did, and I could pick up on his energy. I felt very uncomfortable, so no, it wasn't that one. It was this one. It was that one. So I just imagine that behind my back between him and me, because he was really quite like, I do miss that 2 meters apart thing that they said 2020 when they said 2 meters apart. I thought, I love this feeling. He was really close to my back and I was like, back off. So I just imagine that. And then I could just feel him like moving away from me. They are very powerful, aren't they? Like whatever you're feeling, if you charge it with that feeling, because that was fear, because he was really close up to me and I was like, I don't feel comfortable with you. I don't like anyone close to me. Well, apart from babies and children, my daughter and my dogs and husband. But you get the drift. Strangers who I do not know, like I miss those 2 meters, but it made him like just move away from me. And I thought, gosh, it is a very powerful form of protection. Am I correct in feeling that?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I would even say that that's actually, what I would really like to say about it is that's an extremely good intuitive way of using them. Also because I think, and I've said this before on other podcasts as well, that gotten me a lot of flack. Whatever is in your ancestral line, magic wise, esoteric wise, is going to work best for you. If it feels like a struggle, it's because it is a struggle. And what you just did, and you did it with, as I imagine, probably without really much effort. It came effortlessly, I imagine.
It did. It did.
Yeah, but that's because that is probably it's in your DNA, it's in your genetics. So this is your nervous system is already accustomed to this form of magic through through the generations. So Europeans especially, like even Anglo-Saxons, because you had a lot of mixing with the Norse people, and then also the with the French that can later, that were also Norse but then became French and then came, you have those genetics already. So in the UK and Germanic, Belgium, Germany, Holland, and Scandinavia, that is our natural magic. That is our ancestral magic. And you say that they signed to me. Well, maybe I was just paying attention at the time, because they obviously sing to you too, or you would have never done that. Maybe you would have done something else, like maybe you're saying a prayer to some saint, or maybe you're thinking of a certain, I don't know, a Greek god, if that was in your DNA, but you thought of that specifically. And that's for a reason. It's because it's your birthright to use this. And that's really all I want to say to people, like when they feel like, I don't know if runes are for me. It's like, if you are from these places that I just mentioned, they are absolutely for you. You should at least give it a shot and see how you get on with it, because chances are it's going to work remarkably well for you. And that's part of the reason why it's been so associated with extreme right and hate symbols, is because they don't want you to have access to this magic. Your natural birth magic, your genetic magic passed down to you from your ancestors, is because it's powerful, and it is even more powerful because you're supposed to be using it.
Got you, Tina, because it was like when the person said about you using it for what it did, and I didn't question it. I didn't. Oh, in all the things that I've, like in the New Age movement, where it was like, imagine this gold bubble, imagine this, that, and the other. It's never worked, never ever worked. Yet it was just like, just seeing this symbol between me and that person, and it just came naturally. It just absolutely naturally. And it wasn't like he suddenly disappeared. He just backed off, and then I could feel him backing off. And he was, and it wasn't like he wasn't intruding. Well, he was intruding my space, but wow, thank you, Tina.
I know. I this is what I want people to understand most of all, that it's not that I'm special. It's not that I have a gift or a power with these things that other people don't have. No, I just for whatever reason, I just had the time to be paying attention at the time, to maybe now be telling you and other people this, like, you can do the exact same things with these runes, because they're yours.
I just hear the words with you. You're such a natural teacher. Because I like, people when they watch this video, they will see you talking and then see me talking, but you were listening to everything I said, and you were taking in, and I was like trying to comprehend what happened, and you were just like, I can hear what happened, I can see what happened, and this is what happened. And I'm like, thank you, Tina, thank you. Gosh, because like in England, we a lot of English people, we've lost our, but we haven't, have we? It's people like you that share your wisdom and your knowledge, which reminds me, because I read Fiona's, and I felt it, Substack, it's called, isn't it? And she was saying about when a person returns to, and this is what you're saying, Tina, too, when a person returns to their ancestral path, an alchemy process starts, and he or she will awaken the qualities of that God within his or her character, and the wisdom of our ancestors will be unlocked within the tribal consciousness of people. This is the real DNA activation, unlike New Age ascension nonsense, which is another weapon of our enemies to induce passivity and can't pronounce that big word. And that's what it is. You're talking about it, Fiona's talking about it. When we start to tune into our roots, our ancestral roots, and where we come from, which is Europe, isn't it? Because England was never separate from Europe. It was one big landmass. But when we start to look at our history, our true history, not what we're taught in schools, we start to activate that wisdom and knowledge. And that's what they've wanted to suppress, isn't it, all these years? They don't want us to stand in our...
No, of course not. I mean, look at how the world is run. Well, maybe not how, but by who it is run. These are people that are just, I am convinced that at the very top of it all sits not a person, but it is an entity.
Yeah.
It is an entity that maybe some people would consider a demon. Maybe these people would consider it a god. I don't know. But it is something else. And you can see that in these people as well. When you look at, like, I don't know, the WEF, when you look at the videos of their talks that they're having in Davos, do you see humans on that stage? Because I don't. It's so much shaped like a human. So most of them look like they're melting, but that's not a person anymore. That is a facsimile. There is no soul in there. There is a coldness, a hardness in there that I can't, for the life of me, call human. And
No,
that I think also that is part of it then, because you and I, we are people, like we are humans.
yes.
They have no control over us because we think of ourselves and our gods. We have our personal connection to our gods. We look at ourselves, we look at natural law, and we try to work with that, not against it. But these people are completely against natural law. They have no concept of it, really. They think it is a joke. And Thomas has said this, and I agree with this, that I don't think they know what to do with us. So they have to suppress us in some way because they don't know what to expect from us, which rightfully so, I might add.
Yeah, I agree with you. Because it's like one of the things, the other thing I love about listening to Thomas is it's like within this life, it's always questioning things. It is a search of understanding who we are, what we are, and always questioning it. And I think that's been the big, I think a lot of people are, a huge amount of people are turning away from, but there's still a huge amount of people that really love the celebrities, don't they? And they love that whole arena of falseness.
Oh, I think most of those people are NPCs. Yeah, there's no nice way of going about that. I think those people, well, if they have a soul, it's probably not a human soul. It is what it is. I mean, these people are so dull to begin with. You know exactly what you're going to expect from them. Have you ever been try to be in a room full of people like that and how boring that is. Uh, I have worked with people like that in an office, and that's all they cared about. What they saw on TV the next day is like, oh my gosh, this celebrity wore that on this event, isn't it just no, 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 no. And I'm sitting there going like, oh no. And
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I
No,
can't, I have no connection with those people.
yeah. No, the last week, with everything that's going off in America, and it's almost like robotic with people's responses, like, oh, and it's the same, like, what's it called? Conversation. And I'm like, I said to this one girl, I said, do you believe everything the media says, or are you going to really study into everything? But it's almost like a parrot coming out. It's always the same narrative of like, and for the last 4 years, it's been that same narrative of everyone reacting to what they saw on that big black box. And sometimes it's so boring, and that's why it's so refreshing to talk to people like you and to Fiona and to listen to your podcast. So to get back to you and Fiona, you're going to start doing your podcast again, aren't you?
Yes, at the end of this month, we are recording the next one. We had to take a bit of a break because of personal reasons, also because we were traveling for a few days. And well, Fiona was also moving, of course. But yeah, we are starting again at the end of the month. And we have a couple of good guests lined up, returning guests also, which one will be Freya, by the way. So if you're interested in runes, definitely check that one out because it's a fascinating woman. She's a bottomless vat of knowledge when it comes to runes, and I could listen to her for days on end, and only interrupt to ask a question.
See, that's how I am when I listen to you and Fiona. You two sit there, and it's like stumbling on this conversation that two private people are having, like, and you're talking about things that interest you. And I'm scribbling notes down, like, I'm like, oh my God, oh my gosh. I mean, you and Fiona's chemistry and your wealth of knowledge when it comes together is amazing. And you have these such interesting guests on and speakers. Like, it's so weird because, like, from your conversation, I reached out to Beyond, but unbeknown to me, you had a conversation with David Sherb. That, I think that's how you say his surname. Yeah, but I didn't realize. He found me on Instagram, and I was listening to his wisdom. I mean, I think he's just amazing. But you've had this conversation with him, and you two are so ahead, and you're like a breath of fresh air, because every time I like listen to YouTube, and I know you shouldn't, but like believe everything you hear, but they all go back to like this simulation theory, and then they all refer back to the Bible. And then I'm got to the stage now, as soon as they say the Bible, I just switch off, because it's almost like, but you and Fiona never do that. You just talk about your life experiences, and you both got this wealth of knowledge and wisdom. It's just, you're both a breath of fresh air. So
Well, both me and Fiona were brought up in Catholic countries. So we were brought up in that way, or at least were in contact with it for a very long time. And we both had the same feeling like, I'm just not connecting with it. It's doing nothing for me at all. I mean, I'm spending more time finding the contradictions in what they're trying to tell me than that it inspires me. It's not inspiring me. In fact, it's pissing me off, if anything. Because oh, it works in mysterious ways, but that is not an answer. That is not a good answer, and I won't accept that. And when I started to then look into what people believed before Christianity came to Europe, all of a sudden I had this, but wait a minute, that's actually way more logical in so many ways. Just the concept of polytheism to begin with, just a concept. So you have many gods, and they all represent a certain something that we also have And maybe we have more of this, then more of that. Some people have more love and other people are more warlike, but there is something out there for everybody. And it's still divine, it's still bigger than us. But isn't that on a psychological level way more healthy to at least have something like that rather than this ideal that we will never reach, who will punish us if we don't reach it, but will gaslight us into thinking we can reach it?
Yes. And that was my biggest thing, because the connection is, I was Church of England, but my daughter went to a Catholic school because I wanted her to have that Catholic upbringing, or a church, so she can make her own mind up. And funny enough, she's like, well, I don't know what she thinks to me sending her to a Catholic school, but she says like, she doesn't believe in it all now, but she's made that informed decision all by herself. Oh God, my menopausal brain. Oh, Tina, help. Is there a room for menopausal brain? Honestly.
Yes, actually.
Yes.
The berkana, it's the one that's shaped like a, hold on, I'll draw it for you.
Oh, got you. Thank you. Can we do an episode, a podcast on menopausal brain?
I had mom brain for a very long time. Oof, it was awful, really. I couldn't keep my head together over anything.
No, and I think that's it. I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm like having these light bulb moments going off, and I'm going, yeah, I connect, and then it's like, and then it stops, and then I'm like, where was I going with this? It's like, oh, Tina, you are like a breath of fresh air, and you're so, like I say, I keep saying, you're grounded, you're down to earth, and I'm so, when I remember, like when the conversation with Thomas, it was back in June, and he was talking about you and the fairies, and like you were heavily pregnant in Italy and you heard this music, and like my journey from then for the last 6 months has just been incredible. Like to spend time in your presence and talk to you and learn from you, and oh, I can't thank you enough.
No, you're most welcome. I mean, it's what I want, to be honest, is to, I don't want people to, just take my word for it. I really just want people to at least be aware that I'm not special. It's just that for whatever reason, I just had the time and the opportunity at the right moment in time to form a connection with these things. And I just want to spread that. It's like, it's not me, okay? It's you, it's Fiona, it's Thomas, it's everybody, it's every soulful person out there that can do this, can do magic. It's not because anything else, really. It's just you. It's
I
always
know,
just you.
but you bring a wealth of knowledge and understanding, and I so appreciate that. And from my conversation, I know, like when I listen back, I'll be like, oh, Jenny, do shut up and don't go off on a tangent. But from what I got from my conversation with you about the runes tonight, is like the runes, unlike the tarot, unlike anything else, the runes are whole. It's almost like the runes have got so much layers to them, so much understanding, and it's almost like you can not use them, but I think the runes are the basis of our life.
Yeah, they are sort of the universal building blocks of our
Yes.
lives. That's true. And they are very specific magical medium, let's say, a magical tool specific to our geographic region, for the exact same reason that people say that white people shouldn't get involved in voodoo practices or Native American shamanism. They're right. They're correct.
Yeah.
That's true. We shouldn't. Not when we are not invited, at least. And I think the same is true for runes. Now, am I saying that anyone that is not from our geographic regions is not allowed to use runes, or at least have an interest in them? Absolutely not. I mean, I have an interest in other practices as well. I certainly do. But what I am saying is that it's going to work best if it's in your genes, if it's in your genetics. You are most likely going to find that it feels like a struggle if it's not in your genetics. Just like Native American shamanism is going to feel like a struggle for me. Santeria is going to feel like a struggle for me. Buddhism is going to feel like a struggle for me. Because it is. My nervous system is not attuned to it.
Got you. Because like my friend said, like about Buddhism, and I could never understand it. Never, because it's not my DNA, it's not my roots, it's not my ancestors, is it? It's obviously like the runes spoke to me, even though I've never outwardly gone looking for it, but it's come into my life, and I'm going to explore more.
Yeah, but a lot of that is also to do with, if you look at certain runes, they have connections to certain plants. Plants can be very specific to geographic regions. And if you have never seen that plant, then yeah, you don't know that plant. You're going to have a harder time connecting to it. Just like me, I didn't grow up in the jungle. I have never seen the plants of which ayahuasca is made, for instance. I don't know what I'm doing with that. I just don't know. I don't know what entities are connected to these plants because I don't know this plant. I am not in that region. I'm just not there. Just like somebody that did grow up in the jungle has never seen a pine tree in their lives is going to have a hard time getting a good feel of a pine forest, of what spirits are there, of what mythology is connected to those sort of places.
Just a quick question. Cacao, is that the correct way of pronouncing it? Cacao ceremonies are really being pushed, like it's the in thing over here in England. Like you need to connect to the cacao plant, the wisdom, but it's Southern America, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. Sounds like
Yeah.
bullshit to me, to be honest. I've never heard of that, ever.
Have you not?
Maybe they do it in South America, and I'm not. I don't have any opinion about that. But when I hear it being pushed here, that sounds like bullshit to me.
That's what I love about you.
For the same reason that yoga at a certain point was pushed here, and then every suburban middle-aged soccer mom was doing yoga all of a sudden, like, I'm so spiritual. No, you're not. It's not even yoga what you're doing. You're just stretching and gossip.
Yeah. Do you know what? Working in a nursery is like I've been more flexible than all the times I was doing yoga. But it is that spiritual path, isn't it? It is like you to become seen as spiritual, you need to become very vegetarian and very into yoga and very like peace and love and everything like that, isn't it?
Yeah, those same people that say all those things, they also want to call themselves all sort of shamans all the time. Huh? Yeah, I want these people to look into shamanism, like Siberian shamanism, and go have a look for yourself how brutal that stuff really is. You're gonna have nightmares for the rest of your life. It's not fluffy. It's not fun. It's very dark. It's gruesome, actually. And yeah, also shamanism has a lot to do with dying, death, not the death of the ego, but actual death. A lot of shamans poison themselves, so they're on the brink of death and they have to come back from that. several times even. And
Yeah.
that's just one of the smaller things. Actually, that is not even one of some of the more gruesome things. But yeah, the chance of dying is pretty high, and you need to be okay with that.
I'm not going to go down that path at all.
No, because they will never push your own spirituality on you, ever. They will, if you see some sort of spirituality being pushed in the media today, here in the West, in Europe, it is always something that's going to be detrimental to your spiritual development. It's never something that is actually going to help you, because it's
And
never from here. It's always from somewhere far away. Trust me, bro.
because they never push the paganism. I mean, I don't like using that word paganism, but they never push that, do they? They never, it's never like getting, and like Thomas says, you know, it's just, and I love his view. It's like not those people that dress up and then go to Stonehenge and like do the dance and whatnot. It's just normal people living in harmony with life, but they never push that, do they? To be content with what you got and just raising a child and looking after your home, and it's never pushed, is it?
No. No. For the same reason that they've always programmed us Westerners or Europeans to stop our ancestor veneration, even though that has been a practice that has been practiced for, well, an extremely long time, until recently. And really, it's a very short time since that has been discouraged. But with all this, like your white guilt, and you have in some way, you and your peasant ancestors that lived in dirt and couldn't afford shoes, yeah, you somehow benefited from white supremacy. It's like, did we? Did we really? ah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure my ancestors benefited a lot while they were working in the coal mines.
exactly. Well, I said to you, can we do for an hour? And it's been an hour, and your time is precious. So, Tina, thank you. Honestly, I love talking to you. I really do.
Thanks for having me. I can run my mouth for hours. So.
I know. But thank you. Or all I can say is thank you. Is there any like before I sign off, is there anything else that you just want to add? I'm going to put like the your channel. Is it on your channel or with the
I'll send you the link to my Substack because it has all the links in there anyway.
please, and then I'll add it to this video because so people can reach out to you. And but honestly, anyone who, you know, anyone who's still listening, everyone who's listening, because you are still listening, honestly, check out Tina and Fiona's BS podcast because it's just amazing, and your channel too is amazing. And the interviews, it's like I hear you when I hear you talk to other people as well. I'm like, oh, learn so much. So from me, Mountain Mowbray, thank you so much for still being here. But I'm going to hand it over to Tina to say goodnight before I do my elegantly, like, where's the stop record? So Tina, over to you. Thank you.
Well, if there's one thing I just want to reiterate is that magic is your birthright. That's really all I want to say to everybody that's listening, and especially if you are in the European regions that I've already mentioned earlier. Like runes especially are something that you might want to look into, because what do you really have to lose from doing it? You could gain a lot, but you're not losing anything, certainly not. So, and I'm not saying that you have to buy my runes or buy rune readings from me. Just do it on your own, if you will. Make your own. That's probably even better. But yeah, I mean, there's a world of magic at your fingertips, and all you really need to do is reach out and touch it.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you, Tina. So it's good night from Tina and myself, and I'm going to stop recording.